Guys, this is Sports with Dylan. This is part 3 of analyzing every draft pick in the first round. And I've gone through most of the interesting ones, but don't worry, we're getting more trades and better value picks. At number 21 overall, there's already a trade. The New England Patriots trade down with the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs then proceed to draft Trent McDuffie. I think this is a great pick. I picked Daxton Hill to them last draft because of the versatility. Trent McDuffie can do that as well. He can play cornerback and safety. So this pick makes so much sense for both sides. And I quite like that the Chiefs went secondary here. Because receiver, most of them are off the board. So it makes a lot of sense that they went secondary. Although, given that Jermaine Johnson was still on the board, I would have done that if I were the GM. At number 23, I skipped 22 because that was one of the Packers picks. The Cardinals traded their pick for Marquise Brown to the Ravens. Then the Ravens traded that pick to the Bills, who traded up. The Bills selected Kyrie Long. This pick makes so much sense. I thought they'd go running back, but no one trades up for a running back, let's face it. So, it makes so much sense because Tre'Davious White tore his ACL. We don't know how he's going to come back. Hopefully all pro again, but we don't know. What we do know is that Kyrie Long can be a perfect number 2 complement to him if he does come back superstar. And if he misses part of the couple opening games of the season, Kyrie Long can easily step into that number 1 role. At number 24 overall, the Dallas Cowboys selected Tyler Smith. Now, this pick did not make sense to me. I know they could have used an offensive lineman. That makes sense. But Tyler Linderbaum, another Tyler, was still on the board. And Tyler Biadasz, what's with the Tylers? Sir, what? Anyways, Tyler Biadasz, their current center, has been fine, but not amazing. Tyler Linderbaum, though, would be a great center. But they decided to go for Tyler Smith. I'm really getting tired of saying Tyler. Because I guess they felt like Tyron Smith, another Smith, who I just realized has the same T. Smith as Tyler Smith. Maybe that's why they picked him. Anyways, Tyron Smith was starting to get injured more and more often, and he's aging quite a bit. So it makes sense for them to go right tackle here, and then Tyler Smith can eventually slot in at left tackle. But I still would have gone Tyler Linderbaum. Again, what is with the Tyler? At number 25 overall, the Baltimore Ravens were picking due to their trade with the Buffalo Bills. They selected Tyler Linderbaum. And just look at it. Eric DeCosta is an absolute mastermind at drafting players. Absolute mastermind, just like Joe Douglas, which you'll find out in a minute. Anyways, Tyler Linderbaum was desperately needed after Bradley Bozeman left in free agency. So it makes so much sense all around that they ended up selecting him, and they got Kyle Hamilton. Bit surprised they didn't go a defensive end, which they could have used someone for Calais Campbell to mentor, but still, Tyler Linderbaum on that offensive line, that will truly make Lamar Jackson happy. At number 26 overall, the Tennessee Titans traded back into the second round with the New York Jets. It's a bit surprising given that they still desperately needed an offensive lineman, and Tyler Linderbaum's still on the board, like I mentioned last time. But the Jets did great with this pick. They selected Jermaine Johnson, and honestly, I'm starting to think Joe Douglas is an absolute mastermind at drafting players. Because look at their draft class last year. Okay, sure, Zach Wilson pick didn't exactly work out, at least yet. He could still break out. But Elijah Vera Tucker played very well on that offensive line. Elijah Moore played extremely well, especially given that Zach Wilson was his quarterback. No offense, Zach, but you know what I mean. Michael Carter, the running back, played really well for his first season, especially at running back. He easily stole the starting job, even though he was a fourth rounder. And Michael Carter II, the cornerback, no relation to the running back, played very well and got easily the backup job in the cornerback position. And Brandon Echols, probably one of the best value picks of this class. And that's saying something. Their 6th round pick gained the starting job in corner. Okay, fine. Their secondary wasn't that great. But still, that just goes to show how good Joe Douglas is at drafting. And this is another great example. I mean, he got Ahmad Gardner, Garrett Wilson, and now he still gets a star defensive end in Jermaine Johnson, who should have been picked way earlier. I don't know what caused him to fall so much, but the Jets gladly picked him up, and again, great value pick. At number 27 overall, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers also traded out of the first round. That makes so much sense for them, given that they didn't have one huge position of need. The Jaguars traded up and grabbed Devin Lloyd, a linebacker. Now, this one surprises me a bit more, given that they kinda could have used an offensive lineman. Specifically, if they had traded up a couple picks and grabbed center Tyler Linderbaum. Because their center, Brandon Linder, retired. So, would have made a bit more sense offensive lineman. But Devin Lloyd is a good linebacker. And now you've got Trayvon Walker and Devin Lloyd on that defense. They're truly trying to patch it up. Skip 28 because of the Packers. At number 29, it got very confusing of who owned the pick. Because it was the 49ers pick, but they traded away last year to trade up to draft Trey Lance. Which means it was the Dolphins pick. But then they traded that pick for Tyreek Hill, which means it was the Chiefs pick. But then the Chiefs traded that pick to trade up with the Patriots. So it's the Patriots pick. And do you know who the Patriots drafted? Neither do I. I never heard of him. And that is very embarrassing, given that I have a list of 140 draft prospects. And somehow Cole Strange was not one of them. I don't get it. I don't get why they didn't trade down more for Cole Strange. They probably could have gotten him in the 3rd round. At the same time, it seems like a Bill Belichick thing to do, to draft some random unknown player, and then he becomes the next superstar of the league. Then he leaves the Patriots, demanding a huge payday. He gets paid a ton and sucks on the new team. What surprises me more is that they trade away Shaq Mason this year. So they proceed to draft a right guard, which was not their biggest position of need. Let's be clear about that. Because they traded away Shaq Mason for too little, a 5th rounder, when they easily could have gotten a 2nd rounder for him. He's great. And he wasn't on that huge a contract. He wasn't that old. So I don't see why they didn't just keep Shaq Mason. But instead, they traded him to the Buccaneers, so now they selected Cole Strange. Which means their defense is still gonna suck, because they didn't focus on that. They don't have one number 1 cornerback, or really a number 1 safety anymore. Sorry, Devin McCourty, but you're too old. And most of the defense, aside from Matthew Judon and Christian Barmore, most of the defense sucks. So, I'm not so sure what Bill Belichick's grand master plan is here. At number 30 overall, the Kansas City Chiefs were picking again. Now, I expect them to pick a receiver because of the Tyreek Hill trade. But, again, there weren't great receivers on the board. I think they still should have, but not as much as the Packers. They have Juju Smith-Schuster, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Travis Kelce, and McCole Hardman on the roster. So, they'll be fine. Instead, they drafted George Karlaftis, which makes so much sense. Because he had fallen so much. I expect him to be in the top 10. And he fell all the way down here. They could use a true defensive end. Because Frank Clark's been inconsistent. And Chris Jones, you can't rely on Chris Jones to do everything. So, Karlaftis makes all the sense in the world here. At number 31, the Cincinnati Bengals drafted Daxton Hill. Now this was an interesting one, because you might go and say to me, well, Dylan, look at this. The Bengals still have 2 starting caliber safeties. Why don't you hate this pick? Well, you see, Daxton Hill can play cornerback as well. And that sounded so cheesy. Was it just me? Anyways, Daxton Hill can play cornerback, which is where he's currently slotted on Cincinnati's depth chart. So even if he can play safety, maybe Jesse Bates will leave in free agency. We don't know. He can't be franchise tagged forever. Hopefully, for their sake, they get him to an extension, but you don't know. And Von Bell is really good as a number 2 safety. But if Jesse Bates leaves, Von Bell is not going to step into that role. But for now, they truly need a number 1 cornerback, which Chidobe Awuzie and Eli Apple are not. But do you know who can be? Daxton Hill. Number 32, it was the Minnesota Vikings picking due to their trade with the Detroit Lions. This pick surprised me, not because it was a bad pick, but because they still could have gotten Kyle Hamilton when they would have been picking. But they drafted Lewis Sine, a safety out of Georgia. Now, this makes all the sense. I had Kyle Hamilton mocked them, and I explained why. They need a safety. Harrison Smith's great, but after that, don't really have anyone, and could use a safety. Andrew Booth was still on the board, so I thought he would be drafted there, because they need a cornerback as well. But safety makes just as much sense. But if you could have gotten Kyle Hamilton where you were picking, why didn't you pick him? Do you actually think Lewis Sine is better than Kyle Hamilton? Plus, Kyle Hamilton has drawn so many comparisons to Harrison Smith, it would make all the sense in the world. But the Vikings instead drafted Lewis Sine. So those were my 3 videos on analyzing every first-round draft pick. Now, I think I'm going to make a video in a couple of days analyzing a bunch of picks from day 2 and day 3, because you'll notice some of the things I said in certain parts are already outdated. So, you'll see what I mean. Anyways, thanks for watching.